Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel. Host Patrick Darms
and your co-host Anton Paras,
and we have not one but two guests joining us today, which is only the second time that this has happened in the history of the podcast, and it's the same two guests that you heard if you tuned into our 100th episode special. Producer Eric Taylor and Peter Baldeo, welcome back.
Thank you. Am I considered a professional guest now, I guess?
Definitely.
Is that even a thing?
It can be if you wanted to.
For sure. Absolutely.
Take it.
Yeah, you're very professional all the time.
Appreciate that. Thanks, man.
And when you're not, we edit it.
That's the glorious
no
part.
one knows.
That's the glorious part about the great country of America here, my friends. Oh, I also think I got you a Patreon subscriber today.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Tell me. Oh, and I owe you a Patreon subscription. I'm going to write that down right now.
Well, speaking of the Patreon, we might as well do the shameless plug for that. If you would like to hear our episodes a whole week early and ad-free, join our Patreon. You'll get additional perks as well. Links are in the description. So, anything to share, gentlemen, before we get into this week's episode?
Anything to share?
Yeah, anything. This is your opportunity, Eric. I know, Eric, you have stuff to share.
Yeah, man. I finally started the YouTube channel that I've been working on for about 6 months with the help of, I think, Pat. I don't know if Anton had seen any of them, but with assistance from them, getting everything set up. But it's called Aliens in the Doghouse. It's YouTube. It's at _AITDH. I do video game commentary over there, and there's one video up right now, but there's 2 more coming, actually 3 more coming before the end of the year, and then I've got a lot planned beyond that. So if listeners could help out and like and subscribe and all that good stuff, it would certainly go a long way. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you letting me do a little shameless plug of myself.
Of course, we can share that in the description as well.
Thank you.
And Pete, anything on your end?
Oh,
you're on mute, Pete.
I can't hear you, Pete.
I don't think so, man. I think I'm going to save the content for Titan AE.
Let's get into it. I'm so excited to talk about this movie.
Let's do it. Yeah. So today's film is Titan AE. It's the year 3028, and the Dredge, a vicious alien race, have destroyed Earth. 15 years later, a young man named Kale learns he possesses a genetically encoded map to the Titan, a spaceship that holds the secret to the salvation of the human race. With the Dredge in hot pursuit, Kale blasts off with the new crew of the Valkyrie in an attempt to find the Titan before the Dredge destroy it, along with mankind's last chance for a home of their own. Featuring an all-star cast and an edgy, out-of-this-world soundtrack, Titan AE is an intergalactic thrill ride for a new generation. The film was released on June 16th, 2000 by Fox Animation Studios and 20th Century Fox. It was directed by Don Bluth and Gary Goldman. The screenplay was written by Ben Edlund, John August, and Joss Whedon, with additional story credits for Hans Bauer and Randall McCormick, featuring the voices of Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, John Leguizamo, Nathan Lane, Janine Garofalo, and Drew Barrymore. The budget, $75 to $90 million, adjusted for inflation, that is $136 to $164 million, and the box office was only $36 million, that is $65 million, adjusted for inflation. Anton, this was your choice. Why?
So we always talk about animated films every season. I feel like we talk about the big names. We talk about Disney. We've talked about adaptations of anime. And we've talked about some non-Disney as well. And I feel like you can't talk about animation without also mentioning the name of the legendary Don Bluth. So I felt like it was more than appropriate to put this movie on deck and just discuss it because it was a really interesting film. Don Bluth is, of course, a legend in animation. And I feel like when you have a film like this, turn of the century, an advancement in animation, or at least an experiment with new technologies in animation, it's, of course, always going to be an interesting product, especially when you have a name attached like Don Bluth, who we've all seen films, especially folks that grew up in the 90s like myself have seen some of his most famous films like The Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven. So I have a very special place in my heart for Don Bluth, and we'll talk more about this film in particular. But Pat, you also, were interested in talking about this film. Like what compelled you about Titan AE?
I was definitely excited when you suggested this because I too grew up watching a lot of Bluth's stuff. He hasn't really worked in a long time, but he's a very important figure in American animation. He's very old now, and of course, he started working all the way back in the 50s. He was a one-time Disney employee. He left the company in the early 1980s, and for a short while, he was one of their biggest competitors with, his own animation. You mentioned a couple of the films that he did: Land Before Time, All Dogs Go to Heaven, and American Tail. He was a close collaborator of Steven Spielberg during the 1980s. This film, Titan AE, unfortunately, was his last real contribution to cinema, which we'll talk about why. I don't know that he intended it to be that, but it was. He had his ups and downs over the years, right? And, unfortunately, with Titan AE, it ended on a down. I saw this movie not in the theaters because it doesn't seem like anybody saw this in the theaters. And if any of our guests saw it in the theaters, I would be very surprised. I saw this whenever it hit HBO or HBO2, because this is, let's face it, this is not exactly something that would be on the premium HBO channel. You guys remember HBO2? It was like the...
There was no this.
It was like
Second
budget
year.
HBO.
I know
Yeah.
we're punching down right now, but it was on HBO One.
Okay. That's when I saw it. I guess this would have been 2001 when it hit HBO. I liked it. I saw it a few times on there. It never resonated with me the way his earlier works had. So I hadn't seen it probably since then. And that's why I was so intrigued when you suggested it, Anton. I will turn things over to our guests, whoever wants to go first, and talk about their history with Titan AE and why they wanted to be on this episode.
Sure. So I think I'm that guy that saw it in the theater because I did see
I'm
it in the theater.
impressed.
I remember seeing it with my dad because I saw the preview on the TV and I wanted to go see it. And then I think it came out on like a Friday, right? It had to be a Friday. I remember him calling me randomly and he's like, "Oh, I got tickets to this movie. Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Oh man, I wanted to go see Titan AE." And he had me, dude. He had me. And I remember we got to the theater. I went to go see it. I like sat down in the theater, and there's no one in the theater. It's like just me and my dad, dude. No one is there. Like literally, no one is there. I am this 10-year-old kid, like sitting down the seat. I'm like, oh, this is the best thing of my life. This is the best thing of my life. And I loved it, man. I thought it was awesome. So I may be part of that 36 million, which is an awful investment, by the way. If you look at that,
It's not good.
I'm proud of that. I'm proud of helping out Donnie Boy because I love Land Before Time.
You support it. Yeah. Yeah. I only saw this movie once. I never saw it again. And I think it was my first sort of real encounter with how unsafe our planet is. You grow up and you're like, oh, this is the planet Earth. This is how it has been. This is how it's always going to be. Nothing can come here and turn it to ash, And this isn't an asteroid hit like from the dinosaurs that we survived. Like the Earth is gone. And there are forces in the universe that naturally occur that could make that happen. But as a kid, that's some pretty serious stuff to cover. So I was really excited to revisit it. And I didn't remember much of it because I was very disappointed watching it now. I wanted to love it. I really did, but I was pretty disappointed.
It seemed like a lot of people were at the time when this came out. There was a lot of factors working against this film, which we will discuss, but this was a massive commercial failure. It ended up being the final project of Fox Animation Studios. They were trying to capitalize on the box office goldmine that was the Disney Renaissance in the 1990s. It made sense for them to turn to a guy like Don Bluth. Now, Don Bluth had a lot of hits and misses at the box office, but I understand why Fox went to him because he was as seasoned an animator and a filmmaker as things got back then. Over the years, much like a film that we covered previously on the podcast, Anton, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, which came out a year after this, shares a lot of similarities with this film, also a huge box office failure. This film has developed a pretty serious cult following. This has a lot of fans. It must have been the, 50 other people that saw it in the theaters with Pete.
They definitely weren't in New Jersey.
No,
I'll tell you that for sure.
It's the same people that really love Power Man 5000.
Exactly.
I know that one.
Shout out Daft Punk.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That
Don Bluth, I mentioned the hits and misses in his career. Even to this day, as someone who has not released a film since Titan AE in 2000, he still has a huge following. Anton, I know you were telling me how active he is. Even he's almost 90, right?
He is the ripe old age of 87, and he still does like different convention routes on a regular basis, doing signatures, autographs, and just fan appearances. He's very active. So I don't, knock on wood. That's all I got to say is just everyone get your chance to meet Don Bluth while you can, because he's up there.
He's 87.
Yeah, dude is 87, but he is still touring and doing signatures. So
Started working for Disney in the 50s, Pete.
That's good for you, Don Bluth.
if you ever felt compelled to get your copy of Space Ace or Dragon's Lair autographed, he'll do it.
Going into this film, he was coming off a career high. Anastasia, which came out in 1997, that was a big hit. So
For that movie.
I think we're going to cover that on the pod at some point.
my wife loves that movie.
But 2000 was a really weird period for animation because 3D animation started a few years before with Toy Story, right? That's on the rise. Traditional 2D animation, it's kind of going like this. There's a lot of high-profile animated box office bombs around this time. We mentioned Atlantis. You had The Iron Giant, which turned out to be a very well-loved movie, but it didn't make any money. Treasure Planet, a movie that a lot of people, including producer Eric, love.
Love that movie.
Didn't make money. The Road to El Dorado, big bomb. Sinbad, Legend of the Seven Seas, equally big bomb. But they all have their cult followings now, right? They all have their fan bases. And that's why I think, in some ways, Anton, these failures at the box office are more interesting to talk about than some of the biggest hits.
Yeah, and you always have to think about who had the hand in them, and it's just so fun when you list out all of those films, you get a representation of the power players that aren't just Disney. And I feel like that's so fun to be able to see the competition that drives each other to be better and to inject some fun and creative spirit into things, even if they don't work out so well at the box office.
Obviously, we're only talking about Western animation because the late 90s is really when anime became popular in North America.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you had Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. They hit U.S. television in the mid-90s. 1998, we get the Pokemon revolution, the game, the trading cards, the anime, and the first movie, which came to North America the following year in 1999. And then you can talk about all the Studio Ghibli stuff. But that
Right.
was still this was predating that, right? Like I think their first hit was Spirited Away, which was what 2001, 2002. I'm talking about in North
That was
America.
the horse movie, right?
Yeah,
No, you're thinking of Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron.
Oh,
which is
okay.
definitely not anime.
Yeah, the DreamWorks movie.
Sorry.
Close,
No
you
wonder
know. Yeah.
Michelle
We're in the
Branch,
realm, right?
Michelle Branch did the soundtrack to that. Oh,
Super
it's
funny.
gotta be
It
from Japan.
That series actually had a bit of a revival because the Spirit Netflix series got picked up, and it was like a cartoon series is really popular with kids.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Also, this is going to come full circle. Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron is the only other film that I'm aware of that features the voice talents of Matt Damon.
Huh.
Yeah,
Really?
I
Yeah.
think I've
Yep.
heard the title of that film more in the past 10 seconds than in the past 5 years. So
It wasn't a hit.
No.
But shout out to Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. Has a really awesome soundtrack done by Hans Zimmer and Bryan Adams. I really like the soundtrack to that movie.
Yeah, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron had a really fun trailer, and it still sticks with me to this day. And I'm going to go watch Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron.
It's on our list, Anton. We're going to
Michelle
cover it at
Branch.
some point.
I'm upset you didn't mention Michelle Branch. She did like the credits track to it or something.
You think
Did
I
she?
Oh,
I-
right. Michelle
dude,
Branch.
oh,
No. Yeah, Michelle Branch did the closing song for Stallion Spirit of the Cimarron.
Yep. I'm a big Michelle Branch fan. That was my celebrity crush.
would have
as a
never
kid,
guessed,
so.
Eric. I would have never guessed.
I would defend her.
Listen, I'm not hating on Michelle Branch. I went through Michelle Branch phase too, so I'm not sleeping on Michelle Branch.
It's not a phase, dude. If
Wait,
you
Pat,
really
don't forget about
really love
Digimon.
it.
You gotta give Digimon a little shout out too.
You can shout out Digimon.
Yeah.
I'll give. You know what? Rewind the podcast back to does Pete have a plug? The answer is Digimon. Don't sleep on digital monsters.
Yeah, they did
Yeah.
great. They killed it. Sailor Moon.
Yeah.
There's a lot that we
When did
probably
Akira come out? 'Cause
80s.
that's like yeah. Okay.
1988, but
Here's an ultra, right?
Yeah,
it's a
that's
that didn't
That's a
really
classic.
get a widespread American release. It was like an, it was basically what you would call an indie movie here.
yeah,
The first anime film to get a widespread release in the United States was Pokemon, the first movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I
Yeah.
love the subtitle also. Just to clarify, it is the first movie.
The first movie. Because
First
there's a
movie.
bunch. There's the movie 2000.
Yeah.
there's a bunch.
Yeah, it's
There's a whole lot more than that.
Pokemon 4 ever.
Wasn't it forever?
Number 4 ever.
Yeah,
Ever,
for some reason I
ever.
thought it was like forever instead of ever.
Look, before we bring this back to Titan AE and we get into the production history, I watched it last week because we have to cover it for the podcast soon.
Have to. Come on. It's a delight.
It's
Yeah, good point. Good point. I agree with Eric, man.
it's didn't have the same impact now that it did. in 1990.
It
It's
didn't.
definitely it's so funny you say that, dude. So I have this old school Game Boy Advance and like I opened it up and like flicked it open and like it was right by my bed, so I found it. I started playing Pokemon and I was like, man, it just doesn't hit the same, you know?
I don't know what you guys are talking
I
about.
was gonna say the Game Boy Advance SP.
Yes. The one where you can turn the
Yeah.
light on and turn it off.
Yeah,
Those are all my jumbo cards. I have a whole selection of Pokemon paraphernalia over there.
if anyone has an extra copy of Crystal, I'm looking for it.
Crystal's hard to come by.
Look,
I
I
actually have
love my
one.
Pokemon. This
Oh,
is the
bro.
card
Dragonite.
I wanted to
Dragonite?
see Pokemon the first movie.
Nice,
yeah,
nice.
I
it.
still have my ancient Mew.
Yeah,
Oh, I remember they gave everyone Ancient Muse.
yeah.
The second one was
They're
really
not
cool.
very-
You get like an Entei.
Yeah,
Entei, Raikou, Sweetikin.
Suicune. So Titan A.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
Titan
so Titan AE. This is kind of the fun of like doing a film like this. We know it's nostalgic because
Yeah.
it's hitting on all the points of like
Yeah.
things that we enjoyed when we were kids.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of the fun of a movie like this.
And every listener is like, oh, I got blue version. Were you red version, blue version?
Titan AE.
I want to know more about that, Pat. So can we? Because you mentioned some funky things about that.
I'll try.
Well,
It was tough. It was tough to read. The listeners can't see this, but I'm holding up the Titan AE novelization, which I've still managed to hold on to. It was tough. We'll talk about it.
yeah.
Production history of this film. The film was originally planned to be live action, and it would have been called Planet Ice, which is a horrible title. Ben Edlund wrote the screenplay back in 1997. The animation studio was at a precarious moment. Now, Fox had no other projects for them to work on, and it was faced with the choice of potentially laying off the entire animation staff unless they took another project. So they quickly figured out that this would be too costly to do live action. Fox then decided to make it animated. Most of the voice cast were signed back as far as November 1997. Matt Damon, Bill Pullman, Drew Barrymore, Nathan Lane, Jim Brewer, the comedian, has a voice in this film, which I found interesting. Janine Garofalo and Lena Olin.
Dang, it's as 90s as you get.
Yeah. February 1998, John August was hired to rewrite the screenplay. Anton, he's going to be popping up early next season when we talk about Tim Burton's Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Lock him up.
Lock him up, John August. By this point, this cracked me up doing the research. So they hadn't started making the movie, really. They were still in pre-production. Fox had already sunk $30 million into it.
Sounds reasonable.
It's just
For
unbelievable.
what?
Yeah, remember that 30? We're going to need about 45 more.
For what?
I
That's what I'm
assume
writing
hiring the
process?
actors, I guess.
28.5 went to Matt Damon.
Okay.
This would have been young Matt Damon. This was,
that's true.
just
That's
after
true.
Good Will Hunting. So
He's up and coming. You can still get him for cheap.
Yeah, this is pre.
I guess
Pre Ocean's 11. Matt Damon.
Well, they just-
Pre-born.
They just had the worst.
Oh my God, Born.
negotiators.
Pre-born.
Pre-born.
So
Cool
that
movie title.
summer, Fox co-chairman Bill Mechanic fired the original director Art Vitello and handed the reins to Don Bluth and Gary Goldman. Despite their inexperience with science fiction, the two men took on the project. They were given a $55 million budget and 19 months to complete the film in time for a summer 2000 release.
So Bluth explained, quote, "When we came to Fox, one of the things that we all talked about was that we shouldn't try to be a Disney wannabe. We wanted to make a picture that's edgier, still reaches the family, and goes a little further and even brings in the teenagers," unquote. The darker, edgier tone has often been compared to anime. Although Bluth and Goldman denied any influence by anime, they've acknowledged the comparison. Josh Whedon of Firefly fame was then brought on to work on the script. And unlike Bluth and Goldman's previous films, the animation in Titan AE is predominantly computer generated, while the main characters and several backgrounds were traditionally animated. Many of the scenes were enacted by the animation staff using hand-built props before being captured by a computer. Many scenes and backgrounds were painted by concept artist Paul Cheng, who had previously worked on Anastasia with Bluth and Goldman. The score was originally going to be composed by Harry Gregson Williams, but he backed out. It was offered to Hans Zimmer and John Powell, both of whom turned it down, so it ended up being composed by Graham Revell. At a preview screening in Atlanta, this movie was transmitted in digital form from the studio across the internet to the digital projector at the theater. It never once touched film, and it was the first major Hollywood film to be publicly previewed that way. A tie-in video game was planned, which was even announced in the ending credits, but after the film's poor performance at the box office, the game was canceled. So critically, the film wasn't a hit either. It was a 50% Rotten Tomatoes score. It has a 50% Rotten Tomatoes score, and that is our production history for Titan AE.
AKA when they realized there was only 2 people in the theater, they canceled the game.
Well, so
Man, I would have played that on GameCube.
the movie plays out like a video game.
It does.
So we got to go to this place, then we got to go to this place, and we got to go to this place to get this thing. Oh, we found a part of the map, but we don't know how to read the map, so we got to talk to these bird people. But also, you're gonna sit here with a straight face and tell me that the love interest wasn't inspired by anime?
I think that's a fair criticism. I do.
You're gonna sit there and say it wasn't inspired by anime?
It's fair. It's a fair criticism.
This was a very, very anime-esque film. Around the same time, you guys might remember this, there was also the film Heavy Metal 2000. Do you remember that?
I've heard.
I know of it, but I've never seen it.
So it was also another edgy take on the heavy metal series, which is more of like an anthology film for short story, like science fiction. If you look it up, you look at the animation for that film and this film, it's like you can tell they were looking at each other or they were looking at anime together and making the film. So anime is very influential.
Is it a Bakshi movie?
It is, yeah.
Eric, you love her. You love Ralph Bakshi. Yeah.
That guy.
Peter, Ralph Bakshi did the animated Lord of the Rings.
Full circle.
Well,
I haven't seen it, but I heard that I should be
You
able
gotta
to
stop
regurgitate
bringing
it's
that
bad.
up, dude. I'm gonna see.
He's
I'm
gonna start
see,
twitching on camera, man.
It's
I'm
not-
gonna
it's-
see
it's-
Bilbo going
it's tough.
in my nightmares.
Okay, let's take a quick break as we hear from a sponsor. Today's podcast is brought to you by Sprizzy. Looking to skyrocket your YouTube channel's growth? Meet Sprizzy, your video's ultimate matchmaker. Their tailored ad campaigns connect your content with viewers who are already looking for videos like yours. With Sprizzy, you're not just getting views, you're gaining subscribers who are genuinely interested in what you create. Are you ready to boost your reach? Visit Sprizzy.com today and let's launch your channel to new heights. Sprizzy, the smarter way to promote your YouTube channel. And now that we're back, it's time to talk why Titan AE wasn't better. I just noticed something in my novelization really quick before we start. There are apparently 2 other novels associated with the film.
No shot.
Wait, what?
One is called Kale's Story, and the other one is Akima's Story.
Huh.
Interesting.
So we can see where some of the budget went. They paid at least one author to write 3 novels associated with the film.
How many pages is that?
This is 225.
Okay.
Wait, side note. Can I go back and do a plug earlier? Like, can you guys edit that in? Because I, as you've been talking, there's so many plugs that I need to give now.
I'm not going to do that, but you can mention it.
No, I'm not going to do that. Go ahead.
No, you can mention it.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want to say? Please, the platform is yours.
I saw a movie with Ethan Hawke the other day called Predestination on Amazon Prime. It's one of those time travel movies, and I think it gets time travel pretty... It's a really good movie, but you cannot look
Have
away.
you talked about this on the podcast before?
Is that the one where he goes in a wardrobe a lot?
No,
that's the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Anton.
C.S.
No,
Lewis.
no. It was the one where is it the one where he steps into the closet?
No, he's got this like briefcase looking thing that he's always carrying around, and that's how he...
Oh, I saw a commercial for that.
But,
Someone
dude,
has talked about this on the podcast before.
It's trippy. It's worth a watch. It's super cool. Ashley and I watched it a few weeks ago, and it just hit me when we were talking about all this stuff that like that's what I want to give a plug. So check it out. It's pretty cool, and it's Ethan Hawke. That's one of the reasons I saw it.
Okay.
I think it was 2015, but it was very entertaining.
Does this tie into Titan AE in any way?
No,
Okay.
no. Feel free to edit that out. Just more of a recommendation for you guys.
Nah, I feel like I should leave it. Okay. Number one reason why this wasn't better, studio interference. You could also call this studio failure, studio problems. The issues at Fox meant big time trouble for this film's production. I mentioned a bit earlier in the production history how the animation studio was in a, quote, precarious position. That is putting it mildly. It was terminal, even before this film began production. It's never good when a studio pins all of their financial hope on a single film, and that is what happened here. During production, they suffered a number of cutbacks. The studio, like Fox's animation studio, it ended up closing. They laid off 300 animators in 1999, and as a result, much of the film's animation was outsourced to several independent studios.
Now, were all of those independent studios, they were still under like what, the director who was telling all these different animation studios to do, you know what I mean? How can you do that and expect an artistic vision to actually come out?
It's the same thing with other animation studios, like even major ones like for example, The Simpsons. A lot of the animation, you have the main vision for what needs to be, created and styling, but then the actual like scenes in between get finished by like animators in Korea. So it's kind of taking that same concept without having the in-house animators. You just kind of outsource all of it, and then you kind of cut that across you cut that across a lot of different studios to kind of get the end product.
Wow, that's pretty well. I didn't even know that.
Well, there you go.
Bluth and Goldman were handling the direction, but I think, Anton, to the point you were making, there's different kinds of outsourcing for different reasons. This wasn't done for a good reason. This was just done simply to save money. Do any of you recognize the name Blue Sky? Because they were one of the studios.
Isn't there an anime called Blue Sky?
There probably is, but so this studio was in its infancy, but they would go on to have great success with the Ice Age films and the Rio series.
Did Rio do well?
There was 3 of them. It did well enough.
Did well enough. There we
I
go.
liked Rio.
It was acquired by Fox in 2002, and it got shut down when Disney bought Fox in 2020. The point that I want to make is all of these layoffs, they went from 300 animators in studio to 66. So that is what Bluth and Goldman had to work with. Most of the animators continued working on this despite knowing that they would be losing their jobs upon completion of the film.
Yeah.
So that's tough.
I mean, I would say it's tough, but like just wanted to comment. It's amazing to see what they completed in spite of that.
Yeah.
I think you especially see in the beginning of the film a lot of the the blending of that animation and effects used to kind of computer generate a lot of the ships, the backgrounds. That's not something easy, especially in 2000. So I think that in spite of that, great job, 66 animators for getting the job done.
They did get it done. The name I mentioned earlier, Bill Mechanic, he was fired from 20th Century Fox prior to this film's release. And like I said, they closed the animation studio 10 days after this film was released. But that also meant they didn't promote this film well. They didn't distribute it well. It's no wonder why Pete was the only person that saw it in theaters. I do remember seeing the trailer, and then I don't even really remember this even coming out. It kind of just came and went.
Do you think they forced it out as like for tax reason? Like, why would a studio put something out that they know is going to lose money from a studio they know they're going to close? Because if the writing's on the wall, right? Why even? Or you sell off what you have of it
It's trying to recoup the money.
when you liquidate the business. If you know it's not going to make money, and we knew that they knew that it wasn't going to make money because they weren't marketing, right? Why would you deliberately not market something? Like, if this was their last shot and they wanted the studio to survive, why didn't they try to enable it to survive?
My guess is they just had a set amount of money that they were willing to sink into it, and they wouldn't go over it. Because remember, back then you had two options. You either released it in theaters or you went direct to video. And direct to video would have meant additional costs because they would have had to make all of the physical
CDs.
videos, or I guess technically DVDs were a thing in 2000.
And I will give credit where credit's due. The thing that they what did they basically streamed it at the premiere? Is
for that one thing, yeah. That is really cool.
That is cool.
In 2000?
Yeah, dude,
Right?
that's really cool, and that's a really cool bit of marketing. What if all the budget went into making that happen?
High speed internet to make make the latency good.
Make that happen, because that's a cool little bit. It's sci-fi. It's a science fiction movie. They do that cool. That's almost like a stunt. No.
One other aspect of this of lack of marketing is the studio didn't know how to market this film. I think you look at the posters for the film. Do you guys remember the tagline?
There was a tagline?
It's "Get ready for the human race." What?
What?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah,
I feel like that could be the tagline for The Amazing Race.
And so then you think about that and you look at all of the movie posters, and it's the two leads just firing guns into the screen, and then there's usually either an explosion or the ship's behind it. I feel like there's no context, of course, for a lot of film posters. You kind of get enough of it if it's like a established franchise. But something like this, where it's a very independent science fiction story that's essentially about trying to reclaim Earth through like a Noah's Ark of like a amazing miracle machine, it's hard to market. And so I think that probably played a big hand in the studio not being able to market it effectively.
That's fair.
There's a couple of really good articles that go into detail about all this. One of them is written by Brian Linder. You can find that on IGN. And the other one is by Evan Bax at Animation World Network. And it goes into various quotes from Bluth and Goldman and others and some of the people at the studio. It goes into some of the detail of like why they were outsourcing. It was just solely to save money. But if any of the listeners are interested, those articles are really good detailed write-ups of it. One of the things I got from those articles was that the Fox executives, they kept pressuring Bluth and Goldman into adding more CGI. And if you know anything about Don Bluth, he doesn't do CGI. He does traditional animation. So he didn't have experience with sci-fi. He didn't have experience using CGI. A lot of it in this film.
Quick rebuttal. Don Bluth does have some experience working with science fiction. If you go all the way back to even working with the video game Space Ace, which is that's more of like a cult classic video game.
Well, these are his words. I mean, he's just like, I don't do sci-fi.
Right. Just I wanted to preface though, I can see the studio wanting to work with Don Bluth on something like this because he is an animator that's been known to kind of work in more in more experimental spaces, whether that's working with video games that also function as films or full animation video games like Dragon's Lair. He's been known to kind of push the boundaries with his animation. So if you're going to work with someone that has a big name attached that isn't necessarily Disney, Don Bluth does make sense.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely understand why they wanted him to do this, but they didn't give him much support.
No.
Hey, Don, can you do this film for us? By the way, we're going to lay off like 80% of your animators.
60% of your workforce right away.
Sorry,
And then we
man.
need you to get it out by June. You got
Yeah.
that? Cool, thanks.
Cool.
And we want it edgy and kind of like anime.
And we're not going to market it for you. And it's that's funny. I pulled up that picture of what you're talking about in like the movie poster, and I made it full screen. You have no idea what this movie's about. It's two silhouettes shooting a laser.
Yeah, they did not put any effort into it.
Don Bluth deserves so much better.
He does.
Sure.
And
I think we're already starting to get into the next reason, which is a question I have for you. Is this actually for kids?
It's not. I mean,
I
they've
don't think so.
clearly said it's aimed for a more teenager audience, but it's still at the time when a lot of people looked at animation as something for kids. So it's hard to translate that to a massive audience.
The other thing too is sorry, Eric, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say the absolute obvious turncoats at the end or towards the end makes me believe that it was written for children.
Yeah.
Oh, the guy that's introduced to us as like, oh, can we eat him now? He's the bad guy? Oh, shock horror. Wow.
That guy showed up in your crew in the RPG, and I was like, "That's him, dude. He's
That's
gotta
him,
go.
dude.
He's gotta go.
He's gonna kill everybody else here.
Right?
He's
Everyone's
gonna
got
He's
friendly
gonna try to kill
eyes.
the guy that he turned on everybody with.
All I'll say is bad writing transcends all age groups. So
Yeah.
Us.
Yeah,
But
that's
the other
true.
thing too,
I
I
was
feel
just
like
making a point.
even if it's for like teenagers, so think of a teenager at 16 in the 2000s. Do they really understand the concept of our planet being vaporized and us having to go find a new home? I feel like it's a very adult concept, no?
Yeah, it's a pretty intense thing for a kid's movie.
Right? I was 10 when I saw this. I had no idea what that was going on.
Okay. Whoa.
Uh-oh.
How many of us here were traumatized by Littlefoot's mother's death?
All of us.
huge.
Okay, so
I'm still in therapy because of that.
adult concepts for kids, that works. I don't
Again,
think
but
that's like beyond
that's-
the pale.
I feel like that's different, right? Because just like a Pixar movie takes you through something awful. It teaches you how to rebuild. So you lose your mom in the beginning of the movie, but you learn that you can survive, you can be alone, and it comes full circle, right? That's more of like a journey, and those are life lessons. The human race being vaporized by an energy alien.
And
Is
then
that
they build
really a
a new
lesson?
and then they build a new planet at the end, and it comes full circle.
If you're
They
maybe the
build
son of like an
themselves another
astrophysicist.
I would say that would make more sense if they were just like, oh well, it was all a myth anyway. We have to figure out how to survive. I don't know. Anton, I feel like I cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's an intense, insane storyline. The plot itself, right? You start off with blowing up planet Earth. So I don't think so. As a kid, you see that you're like, what just happened? So I could see it having a lot of sticking power. And to your point, Pete, I don't think that kids can necessarily comprehend how to process that as effectively as like some more simpler concepts like loss.
Yeah.
Because that's at a scale that I think is really hard for kids to comprehend.
I just think like I knew about the dinosaurs getting wiped out and that cataclysm by the time I was like 6 years old. I just don't think it's so far fetched to think that you can't introduce those heavy topics. And it's not like everyone was wiped out. It wasn't like Don't Look Up or whatever, where like at the end, everyone's dead. They still escape. I don't know. Because I remember seeing it as a kid and thinking, whoa, maybe I didn't process it
Well,
the same way. I don't know.
Well, I was going to say, let's kind of think about it. Do any of its contemporaries approach like a very, even anywhere close to like a plot line? Or can we think of any animation that has that heavy of a scale of stakes?
Atlantis did.
But
Was it a
that didn't
world
have
ending?
a planet blow up.
But it did start off with thousands or millions of people getting killed.
But a lot of that was more so implied than actually showed like very I think, on the nose in this film.
It's the best I can do for you, Anton.
Okay.
I'm kind of with you. I see the parallel you're drawing, and
Yeah,
Eric, I
no,
do
you're
also
right.
see your point
It's-
as well, because
Yeah.
I think, to your point, making a broad assumption that kids can't conceptualize that, especially as you're proving that a kid can, I don't think that's fair. But I think we're all entitled to our opinion, because I remember I really didn't have any idea what was going on, except I was like, explosions and aliens.
I mean, I don't know, and I had seen, Star Wars. They blow up a planet in Star Wars.
I had seen Independence Day by this point.
That too,
Shout-
I
And
mean,
Armageddon.
Damn. Blew
Although-
up the White House.
Yeah, they did.
but those are, I guess, those aren't really like made for kids. But
Yeah, they're not,
No.
and they're not marketed as an animated movie.
I don't know.
No.
Well, Star Wars
Well-
and their merchandising, you could argue it
He's a
was
Jar
made
Jar
for
Binks.
kids.
Gary Goldman himself admitted to AWN, quote, "I don't think anybody under 8 years old should see this movie," end quote. So it's like he wasn't even sold on it.
Was it like people just getting shot in this film? They're bleeding out.
Uh,
I don't know,
Okay.
man. I think kids are too soft. They got
well, so-
gotta know the planet can blow up at any given moment. How else are you supposed to go through life like a man?
there's one thing I think that is a key here. Did any of you watch the trailer?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I
I
didn't.
did when I was a kid. That's why
Yeah.
I knew to
Anton
I
like
did
knows where I'm
23
going.
years
why
ago.
I was watching.
Yeah.
So the trailer is set to the song "Higher" by Creed.
Oh, then yes.
So
I remember it.
Who are you aiming it towards? If
right,
not,
it's like that's not for little kids. You're definitely going for a teenage audience with that song.
I can already see the marketing executive that's like, all right, let's build a persona for who we want this film to hit. They need to wear Jinko jeans. They drink a lot. They drink a lot of Mr. Pibb. They're gonna really, really love it when we bring out the PlayStation 2 in a few years, which we're gonna have this game for.
Give them
It'll work.
They love-
give it
they-
an anime goth GF.
They love Creed and shop at Hot Topic.
May also frequent Spencer's.
I am amazed Limp Bizkit wasn't involved.
Oh yeah,
Bro,
Predators.
okay, you know me. I don't really like to read the scripts. Are you gonna bring up the music?
Oh, I sure am.
Oh my
A
gosh,
little bit
you
later, I
got-
have a whole section
wait.
dedicated to that,
I'll,
buddy.
The
I'll
music-
wait. I'll go pull out my Masters of Music degree, and I'll
Okay.
explain to all you why it sucks.
I don't think you're gonna get an argument from any of us.
I better not. I'll tell you.
some Linkin Park.
I actually love Linkin Park still.
Yeah.
Not currently.
Linkin Park has aged a lot better than the music in this film.
Yeah,
Oh, so true.
To give you an idea of how badly this film flopped, this was not even in the top 10 of the box office for June.
Top 10?
Yeah, that's
No.
awful. So the top
Mm.
earners were, this is what it was really going up against: Mission Impossible 2, featuring Limp Bizkit, Big Mama's House, and Gone in 60 Seconds.
Big Mama's House.
Yeah.
look, Big
I
Mama's House
saw
killed it.
all
That
of
movie
those-
killed it.
I saw all three of those
literally
films in the
have
theater.
Never heard of it. I
Martin
do not
Lawrence,
know.
Paul
I-
Giamatti.
That movie, that
Fun
movie,
movie.
is so good.
It's
I
fun.
will. I will. look
Gone
it
in
up.
60
I'm-
seconds.
Again, I just haven't.
Gladiator was still in
Unfortunately.
theaters.
Oh yeah. Oh, this didn't stand a chance.
No. So the big animated earners that month were Dinosaur, which was Disney's first CG film.
We're gonna talk about that one.
We are going to talk about that. And Chicken Run, the stop motion.
Okay.
Underrated Mel Gibson film.
Both of those films made a good deal of money. Yeah, this never had a chance. By the time July started, this was DOA because The Perfect Storm was out. The first X-Men was out. The first Scary Movie was out.
Oh my
Ooh.
god. What?
Yeah.
No. It didn't stand a chance.
No.
Did not.
This made $22 million in the United States,
That stresses me out.
including the money that they spent on marketing. It's estimated that this lost Fox $100 million, and that is in 2000 money.
You can look at this. When I look at this film,
So bad.
when I look at this film and think about what it was going up against, of course, we all agree that there's no way it stood a chance. But it was also a film that was trying to stay relevant. Stay
Yeah.
relevant with the
Yeah.
music, stay relevant with the animation, stay relevant with technology, stay relevant with a cast that included. And it just reeks of, I don't know,
And I'll be real.
corporate
Like,
chill.
How do
Yeah.
you lose $100 million on a movie when you know it's bad and you've already cut staff?
Another studio that wasn't Fox could have done this justice. There are bright spots, even for me. in
Oh,
terms of
Yeah.
the movie, the ideas, and like kind of because there are some loftier things being talked about in terms of the film, but that's what's kind of upsetting. It could have been a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's I
It
guess well
definitely could have
that's
been.
the name of the podcast.
I mentioned this a minute ago. So I saw Mission Impossible 2, Big Mama's House, Gone in 60 Seconds, Gladiator. I think I saw Dinosaur and Chicken Run in the theater as well. This is back when myself and most people just went to the theaters a lot. And so I was either going with my dad or my friends. I do not even remember Titan AE even being in the discussion of like, hey, what do you guys want to see? Like,
See
it
this
wasn't even presented as an option. That's
I mean,
how bad
honestly,
this
Well, it
movie.
wasn't
That's
even
how far off my radar this movie was, and it shouldn't have been because I was 12 years old. I was the perfect demographic for this movie, and the fact that it wasn't even in the discussion with me or my friends to see it says a lot.
that's probably why they didn't even bother marketing it.
They
Like,
probably knew.
how do you look at that lineup of movies and say this is it?
they're sort of like, I don't know. I know they put things out to die sometimes. I don't understand why that makes any business sense, but
I think they just kind of take their lumps. Like at a certain point, they're like, "We've already spent X amount of dollars. Like we got to take the L."
Recoup what we can.
Yeah.
And I don't know the validity of this statement. I believe that businesses before I think 2010 used to be able to write off the cost of their production if they lost money on a movie.
They still can in some circumstances.
I don't know
because
Is it-
they
I think
still
it's
make
stricter now.
movies that are
It-
clearly to dodge taxes.
Yeah, Pete,
Like,
you're right. It is more complicated now. It depends on how and where the movie's made.
Okay.
If it's domestic versus overseas, some of the laws can be different, but there are certain losses that can be written off.
I was also reading too, there is a mindset in Hollywood for no matter what film, you don't want to be the executive to pull the plug on a project, just because that's basically admitting failure and losing out on whatever payday and salary that you have. And so even if you are attached to something that you know is hot sinking garbage, you don't want to be the one to say no.
well, let's be
So,
real. The executives are still getting paid, even if it flops. So
I mean,
they
one
don't
of them
care.
got fired, Bill
I was-
Mechanic.
You don't want to be the one to get your head on the chopping block, though.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I
Would
guess.
June 16th be considered a summer blockbuster?
Oh, yeah.
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 100%. Yeah.
And how
So
do you?
weird, you're so right.
Because against that lineup of movies, you're done. You're toast.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't remember. That's like them putting out Hocus Pocus in summer next to Jurassic Park.
Marvel Endgame.
Yeah.
Well, no, that's literally what happened. The movie Hocus Pocus was put out summer of 1993.
This,
A
Yeah.
Halloween movie.
this
Yeah.
is this
Next
is
to
the
Jurassic-
week.
And it's
This is
it's
the
like
way-
you intended this to fail.
Anton, did The Thing come out the same weekend as E.T.? Or was that Blade Runner?
You're thinking of Blade Runner.
Yeah, it's like never had a chance. I think I saw The Perfect Storm in theaters too.
Definitely.
Definitely
dude,
saw Scary
that
Movie.
is
Back then,
That's
we
a
were
fun
kids,
one
like-
to see in theaters.
The Perfect
That was the-
Storm?
Yeah.
Wolfgang.
yeah.
Your definition of fun, Anton, like that's a movie where everybody dies.
It's
But it's a
terrifying.
wild
Oh,
ride.
dude.
It was a
That's-
big movie. It
what
was
if-
a,
It
that
was
was a
huge,
big
man.
movie.
I
Yeah.
It was
haven't
huge.
Seen it well because it was a historical thing that happened. I mean, I'm from New Jersey. I don't know how long y'all have been in around this area, but like that was a big deal when it happened, and it happened before I was born. It's not a lot of times where it's like, here's this historic thing that happened in New Jersey, or like on that,
Wait,
New
you talking about The
England
Perfect
sort of-
Storm?
Yeah.
That was
that it?
Massachusetts.
Yeah, I was like, that wasn't New Jersey.
Oh
dude.
no! But like my parents remember it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
They
okay.
don't.
Oh,
like-
okay, got
like,
it. Got it.
yeah,
Got it.
yeah,
and
okay.
it
Yeah.
it affected. It was a superstorm,
Gale.
dude. It's like that's like saying Sandy only affected the Jersey Shore. No, it affected a swath of
Oh, I see what
But-
you mean. Like you
Yeah, it
were
was a
alive during the
significant-
event.
Good
Yeah.
word.
It was a
swath.
significant. What's that?
Good word, swath.
Yeah,
Love good vocab, dude. Solid.
bro. It's I speak one language. It's English. I'm gonna use every word I know.
Respect.
Don't let us stop you.
I appreciate it.
Respect,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. There's
Use that in a sentence, Eric.
Oh, that's that anime movie, right?
yeah, exactly.
The one that was outsourced in Japan, right?
Yeah.
The sequel to Digital Monsters?
that they made a horse hot and it wasn't based on anime.
The sequel
I've
to The
never
Last
seen
Unicorn.
the movie. I don't know anything about it. I just love Michelle Branch, okay?
For the Michelle Branch plug.
Oh man.
Okay. Number 3 reason why Titan AE wasn't better: the storytelling.
No.
Anton just groans.
No. Look, you put up someone like Don Bluth and you look at his best films. One of the most consistent thing, right? The dude's a visionary. You know, he knows ins and outs of animation, knows how to tell a proper story, or knows how to tell a proper story. But with that, you have to have a story in place. You have to have good writers. You look at An American Tail, you look at Land Before Time. A really common denominator is writers Judy Friedberg, Tony Geiss. These people are legendary when it comes to the amount of work that they put into the story writing for someone like Don Bluth. And when you have that care and attention, you can have a visionary like Don Bluth make a great film. Now, we did not
Weren't
have that
involved
here.
with this film.
They were not.
We got some names that we recognize. John August, Joss Whedon, obviously. I can certainly see the similarities to Firefly in this film a little bit, if you want to say something positive.
Don't you dare.
I think the opening sequence is very effective, where Earth gets wiped out. I mean, that's a pretty dramatic way to start a movie.
It moves fast.
A little too fast?
I think, well, you know what? I think the beginning is probably my favorite part of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
it moves quick, but the pace is right.
It's rushed.
Yeah,
I think it was fine just because you really understand fast, like, what are the stakes, and you know what's the important piece of the story that's going to kind of move everything forward. It's whatever the dad gave, his son.
The Genesis device from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan?
The Genesis device.
Just like it took, the reason why I think it did move a little too fast in the beginning is because not the opening sequence, but after it, it's like it took me a minute to figure out, when he's getting into a fight with those other aliens.
Yeah.
And he like wrangles them up. It took me a while to figure out that was the same guy that was with his dad on Earth. Also, I hate that his name is Kale.
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
This was before the health revolution.
Because he was still on Earth, I could see it if it's like, oh, we named him after a leafy vegetable because it's gone now because Earth is gone. But he was there before Earth was. So why is his name Kale? Is it with a C?
It's with a C.
Well, that's worse. So
I think it would have been hilarious if it was also just names from Dragon Ball Z, Raditz,
Goku,
Vegeta,
Frieza.
Like, no, like if they gave everybody else the name of a vegetable, I'd be like, okay, there's a theme here.
Consistency.
This is my father, Tomato.
Cubby broccoli.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's better than kale, but
What did Moran say? Anton Kyle Cauliflower?
Exactly. That kills me. And it wasn't even a Bond film we were talking about. He just
No, it was. It was.
Oh,
wasn't
was it? No, I
I think it was Thunderball.
Oh no, I thought it was I thought the conversation when he's saying there was that movie exec from the really famous franchise who has it was, we weren't talking about a Bond film. It was just so happened he was he was saying there was that really famous franchise where one of the executives has a name like a vegetable. Like, what was his name? Kyle Cauliflower.
Yeah, you mentioned the Vegetable Wars.
I was just like, wait, the broccolis?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Kale. I don't think anybody knew what kale was in 2000. I didn't.
Nope, definitely not.
Wasn't on my radar.
So maybe they just didn't know. Because also with a name like Dredge, it's like, let's come up with the worst sci-fi names we can come up with.
Yes.
The Dredge.
I just think it sounds generic.
Sounds like the Zerg.
It's
StarCraft.
In my opinion, it's the worst thing about the film, the completely underdeveloped threat of the alien villains.
Well, Pat, you said that the novelization has stuff from their perspective. So what is their perspective?
Well,
but besides that.
So you are right. The novelization has entire chapters dedicated to the Dredge. The queen has a name, and she's given like a whole point of view and motivations.
What are they?
We still don't know.
I don't know.
So Wait, you said she's given point of view and
Yeah.
motivations, but so
Well, there's one thing I remember. She became queen by killing the previous queen. It's stupid. It's really
which
stupid.
is super because it almost seems like they're a collective. They're not really. There's not really individuals in the dredge, are there?
Slightly,
kind of like a
yes.
beehive is what it feels like.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. You know what it really reminded me of the most, or I should say, this reminded me of Titan AA because it came out after Halo.
I can see the similarities there.
Yeah, the Covenant from Halo.
How? So, the Covenant is a bunch of different races.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you
Yeah, I
don't know
don't
that
buy
in the
that.
first Halo. You find that
No.
you find that out later on.
I would relate them more to the Geth from
Mass Effect.
Mass Effect, yeah.
Or the Borg from Star Trek.
Both valid comparisons.
Or whatever. I'm just
Yeah.
so confused now how the novelization has things from their perspective, but it doesn't explain why they hate the humans so much.
Does it matter?
I think
I'll
look,
explain
it does.
that.
It does. It does a
in
lot.
Explain
another-
that.
in another movie,
it's soul related.
So
in a different movie, no, they would just be a force, right? But they're very drilling into like, oh, everyone knows about the dredge, and like, you know, they're almost like a species that contacts all these other species. So like,
no, I can answer why they see the humans as a threat because the Titan is an energy based. They view it as a weapon. If it can create worlds, they see it as a weapon, and therefore it's a threat and it has to be eradicated.
To your point,
I didn't
how
say
is
it
a
was
child going to understand this?
good. It's not explained well in the movie at all.
so why do they have to wipe out the species?
It's not
Just-
explained
just
in the movie. It's
not explained.
really bad
Just-
writing.
Oh my god!
Look, I'm not gonna lie. The novelization was harder to get through than the movie.
You told me you read it. I was so hopeful. I was like, finally, answers. They were not there.
Well, the answers must be in book 2 and 3.
It's
This
just
is-
vague. It's not.
No, this is not a film I would look to for nuance and meaning.
No.
Pat, when did the novelization come out? Right when the movie came out?
Yeah.
Maybe the intention was for you to get the books alongside the movie.
And the
They
video
also
game.
play
The
a
video game. But they never told you that because they couldn't market the movie.
It plays out like a video game. They
does.
definitely. I think they might have done that too much because it doesn't. A big long fetch quest doesn't bode well for a movie.
Mhm.
It's not the most interesting. I mean, you can have a MacGuffin, fine, but now we got to go here, and now we got to go here, and now we got to go here, and the people that we always knew were the bad guys turn out to be the bad guys. Oh no, sorry, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say it's a lot of movies.
But there's a way to do it that's interesting, and I'm sorry, I just don't feel like this film did that.
I don't think
for
it's a
me.
very good use of 90 minutes.
No.
A lot of stuff they're rushing through the locations. They're like, and
Yeah.
now we got to stop at this planet populated by bat people.
So
Yeah.
random.
Maybe all of you noticed this, and it really bugged me. There are a bunch of scenes that just fade to black without real resolution. Like you can tell, like that probably should have been a longer scene, but I assume they just didn't have the budget, so they were like, let's just fade out.
They knew the best distribution they were gonna get was on TV, so they planned for commercial breaks.
Something-
for sponsored breaks.
Something you can notice too is a lot of the explosions. A lot of that covers up a lot of either the next scene, or it kind of covers a lot of heaviness of the scenes. You save a lot of money when you have explosions and clouds covering things up.
I saw
do.
it. That's why I paid to see it.
And your final boss is gonna be space icebergs.
Visually,
Yeah.
that was the coolest part of the movie.
Oh, for sure.
I
But
do-
still, it's just space icebergs.
I do feel like they could have done a little better job being a little more creative with the aliens.
It
Like
is-
the visual aspect of the aliens. Not obviously the name is
Yeah.
horrendous. They could have done something better, but that's
I thought it
the
was
race that has to
cool.
wipe us out.
Actually, you know what? I actually think that there wasn't necessarily anything like. No, I don't think it's the worst design ever. I think, especially when I think of like 2000s animation, the usage of kind of this CGI in the background. I could see myself being, when I was younger, being like, "Wow, this is kind of cool."
And-
So at the time, probably it fit a lot more than when we look at it now and say, "We've seen so many more iterations that are better than this."
And the concept
I think
of
that's a fair criticism because one of the things I'll get to it later, but I wrote down something that I think is important when we talked about the age of the movie.
the concept of energy being alive too is interesting. You know, like they're not
Yeah, Zordon.
they're yeah. Well, you know, and Star Trek's done it long before this movie came out, but you know, but how is he able to get through their walls by doing a little finger thing? Like how
No one figured that out.
how
Oh.
does fingering the wall allow him to escape?
You were supposed to
And
pay
and
attention
also what?
to 2 fade to black scenes prior to understand what was happening there.
Okay.
Maybe.
Well, the movie didn't do a good job of making me pay attention. So
There are deleted scenes on the DVD. They don't
they-
add a ton.
Do they advance the plot or no?
There's one you get a little bit more. It's like Kale and Corso are like drinking together in an extended scene when they're just traveling through space, and it's like he talks a little bit more about his father. So no, not really.
The other thing too, I felt that the whole overarching concept of that. I think I remember. I forget. I texted someone. It was based on the new Star Trek, where it was Chris Pine. Chris Pine. He's born on this day. His dad's this extremely capable captain. Then he decides to flame out, and then he's found by Bruce Greenwood. And he says, "You're capable of so much more. You should know this. Come with me on this space hopping." And he does that. And I feel like that theme in this movie, I enjoyed that. I thought it was cool, but it was very cliche to start the movie. Oh, you're capable of so much more, son.
James Kirk.
That's a
Yes.
little different,
James
though,
Tiberius Kirk.
because
Damn right.
that is you're looking at a new timeline basically from what we're used to. I don't know. I give those movies probably way too much slack. I really like those new Star Trek.
Same. I love them.
Yeah.
I think they're awesome.
Well,
But yeah,
not as good as the originals, but they're fun.
I agree.
Also valid criticism.
I agree, Patrick.
Good.
I'm just saying I like that they tried to do.
Eric
They didn't
Bana
just
as
rehash it.
Nero.
Ugh,
I don't know about that either. Listen, they're not perfect.
Nero.
I'm not gonna give them
Spock.
an A+. Anton. I reference fire everything. I reference that so much
I
and nobody knows. What
I
the
saw
fuck
it
I'm
not
talking-
too long ago. My wife and I were like, "Hey, let's revisit this," and I'm like, "Oh snap, Thor's in this."
Yeah,
Yep.
That's
His
right.
first movie.
crazy.
Thor is in this.
Man, it's
I
his
love
first
that.
movie.
Excuse me.
So it doesn't
good.
sound like any of us really liked the plot to Titan AA.
No,
It's not much of a plot.
Nah, it's a lot of cornball dialogue too.
I
Yeah.
think something we talked about it a little bit earlier, but you'd have a plot like this, which is a bit more confusing. You really can't sell it to kids. So even if it's hard for us to try to enjoy it, let alone explain it to each other, I think that that adds to the marketing of it being a bit of a wash. It's like, all right, how are we going to even explain this movie?
They could have done it. I don't know. There's
Space space
I
arc.
it's
I had another thought too. A lot of well-known names in the voice cast,
hmm
like really big names for the era.
Huge.
Even
Oh,
like
yeah.
I
John
mean,
Leguizamo.
Tone
Yeah.
Loc.
Tone
and
Loc.
I think they tried. They definitely did not phone it in.
I
Maybe some did.
I
but-
was very unimpressed by all the voice performances. I have written down Matt Damon does a good job here. It's like but I don't know that he
Yeah.
did.
But it's also like if the animation's off, you're not like because you're right. There are some scenes where the animation is just like totally not the same, and when you have that issue, the emotion isn't going to come through the same.
Like
trying
Nathan
to
Lane
give-
is a great voice actor, and he's completely anonymous in this movie.
Yeah, it's. I don't think this was a film that utilized voice acting well, in the sense that you can look at a good film that I think takes these different voices and articulates it or accentuates it in a way that makes that complements both the actor and then how the animation is built. I think a bit of it gets lost here. I did want to give, shouts out though. There's a few legends in voice acting in this film. Some of you might remember him as Winnie the Pooh. Some of you might remember him as your favorite character, Monterey Jack in Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. But Jim Cummings is in the film for a very small role.
See the alien dude?
He's the
It's real specific. Eric.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Okay, sorry, the blind alien dude.
What about the human guy?
the salvage yard guy.
salvage yard guy?
Yeah.
Okay,
We get
Yeah.
a little Ron
Sorry.
Perlman.
Yep, Ron Perlman.
Yeah, I
Ooh.
remember that.
we do get some Ron Perlman.
We
That's
talked
nice.
about
Wait, Bill
Janine
Pullman,
Garofalo.
too.
Yeah.
President of Independence Day is in the movie. Don't shortchange Bill Pullman.
Oh shit, you're right.
I'm gonna shortchange him.
Damn.
He's not a voice actor.
That's rough,
It's true.
Patrick.
It's not wrong.
I was so unimpressed with the voice cast. It was just they don't have a
Matt-
lot to do.
Matt Damon's not a voice actor.
No,
Based
That is
on
true.
Spirit's dying of the Cimarron.
Legend.
He was really, oh man, Spirit Stallion of the Cimarron. Where have I heard that?
Yeah.
Does anyone know who wrote the final track of the song? I mean, the movie?
Danny Glover.
It's
I'm sorry, Danny Elfman. That's who I was thinking of. And if I just breathe, everything. Okay, sorry.
Kale's character is really, really similar to Dimitri from Anastasia. Like the animation, it looks like a palette swap.
I didn't even think of that, but you're right.
Yeah, you can look at there's a lot of animation that looks very strikingly similar. Even this and a lot of the animation in Atlantis, honestly.
I would say Atlantis is very similar to Road to El Dorado also.
But does it also add up that a lot of these animation philosophies and styles came from people that worked under the Disney label?
Yes,
Yeah,
definitely.
I think it tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how you get your start in animation. I mean, back then.
Let's get into the last reason then, which is the production. We can talk about the animation. I will say we're coming down pretty hard on this film, but it did make me miss Don Bluth's style of animation. It really did. There's nothing really like it anymore.
No, and even the last Disney animated film, which I love, Princess and the Frog, like real 2D animation. It's better. It's sleeker. It's nicer, but it doesn't have the same feel as this era. There's like I don't know how to explain it. I don't know how to explain it in the correct words, but Atlantis, absolutely. This movie, Treasure Planet, and Anastasia, they all had this sort of different vibe, and it sucks that it's just like not around now. You can't find it anymore.
It's there's this abstract concept that we always love to throw around when we think of films like this. It's like heart, right? And I think Don Bluth films have a ton of heart.
Absolutely.
And when I try to translate that heart, it's care in the storytelling, care from the cast of what they're putting together, the support of the studio to properly market, distribute the film, the care of the folks, folks top to bottom involved with the project in really executing on the vision. And I feel like there's a lot of that missing in a film like that, and a film like this. And then when you think of films today, it's hard to get the support for a 2D animation film in the same way that you can because of things like having to cut costs, or where are we going to invest money in to really get the money back that we need. So a lot of that heart, I think, is a bit lost.
You could hear the heart on the DVD commentary. It was Bluth and Goldman. You mentioned the budget. They bring it up a lot on the commentary, and it really did make me sad because pretty much in every sequence, the two of them were talking about what they wanted to do and how they didn't have the money to do it, and they were forced to compromise pretty much on everything in the film. And not with the characters, with the backgrounds, with the action sequences. It's a shame. I came away from it feeling bad for Bluth because like this was his last movie. It's like I said it before, like he deserved way better than this.
Way better.
I think it's also, we have to kind of also think consciously that this was a film that, while it's his last movie, I don't think it's really Don Bluth's movie. No. I think this is just more he did his best with what he had kind of movie, and his name's always going to be attached.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly not blaming him, but it's like,
oh no,
at least you still get some great Bluthy animation in there.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I think it's so interesting to think about where these films in this kind of lost Renaissance period fell and weren't able to have the box office success that films like Shrek had. And that really influenced just a whole generation of films, a whole generation of animation styles to this day. And that's why I wanted to take this moment to get on my soapbox and have everyone go watch Lord of the Rings War of the Rohirrim in December.
Oh,
because if you don't, we're not going to get any more 2D animated film experiments like this. So please,
Anton,
go watch it in theaters.
So the animation on this film, Titan AE, the outsourcing thing makes a lot of sense. Some shots are spectacular, like the ice ring stuff. That looks really good with all the reflections of everything. That holds up 25 years later. There's other shots in the film that look like they were animated by people who were drunk.
They probably were drunk.
It's shocking how inconsistent the animation is in this film. It's again, it makes me sad.
It makes me very sad because at this point in time, the best way to do a sci-fi film like this was animation.
Yeah.
You couldn't really get it, to I don't know. It's just such a lost opportunity is what it is.
Something at this scale, I think, is especially if like your stakes are the Earth's blown up. I think it makes sense to do this animated because we talked about this in other films. When you have a medium of animation, you can be a bit more creative and really experimental because you don't have to worry about paying for special stunt coordinators to kind of execute on some of these effects. And to that extent, I feel like they did capture a lot of that grandioseness, but a bit more inconsistently in this film.
Yeah. And it's a budget thing. On the commentary, Bluth was mentioning how they were having to reuse the same backgrounds in different scenes. And you can tell there's a bunch of scenes where it's distracting, but like all of the characters would be animated well, but the backgrounds are like fuzzy and completely out of focus, and none of the physics looks correct.
Notice that.
Sometimes the character animations look weird too.
Yeah.
Sometimes like the faces sort of look a little like off. I don't know how to explain it. I can't think of an exact moment.
No, you're right. And there's also a number of shots where I don't really know what they were doing. It must have been some weird attempt at CGI, but there's a few shots where it looks like it's being filmed, like there's camera tilts and stuff.
Yeah.
It's very strange.
I actually kind of thought that was cool because you have to make very conscious decisions to make like wipes and cuts or camera tilts with the animation. I thought that was pretty interesting.
It's weird how you don't see it in large parts of the movie, and it's only in some scenes. You're just like, why these scenes? Why not others?
Maybe that will require a fourth watch by me to analyze the nuance and the complexity of why this particular scene we had a screen wipe to the left versus the right
instead of a fade to black. It's actually interesting you say that, Anton. I remember seeing the movie and I never actually thought about that you consciously have to tilt the camera or at least frame it for the viewer.
Yeah. So Anton is going to take incredibly detailed notes and he's going to post them on the Patreon.
No, I'm going to watch Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron.
We're going to have to accelerate that on the podcast now.
Me and Pete are going to have to be
Which
there
film?
now.
Yeah.
Sounds like we have another joint episode here.
Which film?
Spirited Away.
Oh, okay.
You know the anime movie?
Right. Spirit.
About the horse.
The really bad Frank Miller movie starring Sam Jackson.
Speaking of horse films, do you guys know there was a film about horse racing that had Chris Rock as the main horse.
No, I did not know that.
What?
The horse was the film was called Flicka.
Oh,
I'm not even kidding.
No, it was actual people though, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I do remember this because the name was fucking ridiculous.
Because the name was like, if I say this out loud, I'm gonna get punched.
This episode's going to be longer than the movie, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anything to add about the animation?
Animation definitely has you feeling nostalgic when you watch it.
I think the Bluth stuff, yes. The CGI stuff, there's a lot of shots where it just doesn't gel well together with the 2D, and it looks like PlayStation 1 graphics.
Did you think about this too? This was also like during peak Sopranos on air.
Yeah.
So like there's probably like an Entertainment Weekly talking about like, wow, this hot new show, The Sopranos. But at the same time, don't go watch Titan AE.
The dude that does the show, the Entertainment Tonight, Mario Lopez.
Oh yeah, Mario Lopez. Well, Mario Lopez probably had just finished being on the sequel series to
Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron.
Spirit, Stallion of the Cimarron.
We're going to have to cover that now, like soon.
You know, it's up. I think they actually did an animated series of Spirit.
No, they did.
They did. He said that already.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. I was more concerned about Michelle Branch getting hers. Okay.
Don't worry, Eric. We covered it. I'm going to have to accelerate that for a much sooner season.
As long as you covered it, Jesus. Can I just, before we get too off the rails, can I just say, this is some of the worst music I've ever experienced in a film.
It's
so bad. And if
It's
somebody,
it is one of the worst soundtracks I've ever heard.
Okay. It's a travesty that they didn't include Creed in the movie.
I was almost thinking that it would be in the movie, and that would have made the rest of it, I don't want to say bearable, less of a crime. It would be a misdemeanor instead of a felony like it is right now. It was like they went to a Russian folk group and was like, make Western rap.
Okay.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't need to be there. Just do some epic like sci-fi shit. Why do we have to do
They
the
wanted to
incredible?
appeal to the teens, the youths.
It's just yeah. It's like a bunch of people sitting in a boardroom and they're like, we want something to be urban. It's like
We need this for the
we
So
need this for the urban community.
you're not a fan of Power Man 5000?
Okay.
Fun-loving criminals?
Look, this was the time. This was the time period where Faith Hill was top of the game. Y'all remember peak Faith Hill?
No.
Was she?
Oh
I
yeah,
don't.
dude. She had the #1 like Billboard Top 100 song in 2000.
I mean, so Faith Hill is country, correct?
Breathe.
What?
Right. So I'll ask Caitlin. I don't country very much, so I don't know anything about that, about Faith.
I'll send the
Hill.
songs out. But guys, look,
We've all heard
there
of-
were Creed, Destiny's Child,
Yeah, Creed
Cisco.
was huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
2000. You know what we had? We had
Yeah.
a thong song in 2000.
Cisco.
In
dropped
Sync and the
that so
Backstreet
much when I
Boys were
was a
still doing
DJ,
their
dude.
thing.
Yeah. Golden age of music right there.
Maybe.
Golden,
With
Uh.
arms wide open.
bronze, maybe.
With arms wide open.
Yeah, that song was huge.
We
Yeah.
don't.
Linkin
Wow.
Park's first and best album came out, Hybrid Theory.
Hybrid Theory.
Hybrid Theory.
Hell yeah. We're all in agreement on the soundtrack, right? It's awful.
Garbage. Not good.
And even the stuff that's like orchestral is ass.
I didn't mind the orchestral stuff.
Okay. So
It
I
could've
didn't
been
mind.
better.
I guess the score. I didn't mind the
Mhm.
score, but the song choice was
It
bad.
was so
But look,
basic.
as
Such a basic
all right, yes,
score.
I agree, Eric.
You could put that score under anything and it would be like, oh, okay. It didn't have to be sci-fi. If you're going to do a
Jamiroquai?
sci-fi,
Is there a reasonable
I'm sorry,
criticism?
what?
Jamiroquai.
They are not bad, Anton. They didn't belong in this film.
No, and I mean, actually, in 2000, probably if you're gonna attract teens in 2000, this was the music of the time.
Bluth
true,
and
though.
Goldman on the commentary track said the reason you hear all these songs are because they didn't have the budget for quote unquote pop songs, so they had to settle for what they call quote more obscure stuff, end quote.
And
Okay.
that's how you have Power Man 5000.
Yep.
Which
and
the only
Urge,
other-
Texas, Bliss 66, The Wailing Souls, Luscious Jackson,
The only other-
Splashdown.
Jamiroquai.
I need you. There are things that are obscure because they are obscure, and there's things that are obscure because they are bad.
And there's things that are obscure because they're inexpensive to get the rights for.
The only other film I think I saw Power Man 5000 in was Little Nicky,
That's a deep cut.
That is a deep cut.
because it was also the same song that was in Tony Hawk Pro Skater,
That's a classic.
When Worlds Collide.
Okay.
What is like what was collage?
All right.
Oh,
Well, the
you
music
ready?
was the music
Wait,
was
wasn't that
ass.
wrestling, too?
I'm glad we're in agreement.
Do we have anything to add before we wrap this up?
No.
Oh.
Okay. Well, we talked about studio interference. We discussed, is this really a kid's film? Then we covered the storytelling. Last but not least, we were talking about the production. Eric, I know you always like to go last, so I won't even bother asking. So, Pete, as the other guest, would you like to go first and give
Yeah.
your rating?
I will definitely go first. I have 3 reasons here that I wrote down. I enjoyed the movie as an adult because I know there's nothing that I can do, but I remember going to see it when I was 10 years old because it was a space movie, there was explosions and aliens, and I actually really liked it then. Did I grasp the concept of the plot when I was 10? Probably not. Do I grasp the concept now, and do I think it's a cool concept? Yes. I think voice acting is very cool for me to hear as an adult because you're hearing Matt Damon and Ron Perlman. So you're basically hearing Hellboy and Matt Damon, right? And as you hear that as an adult, all of those voices and all those characters that you've seen pop into your head. So that was one of the reasons I enjoyed it as an adult, because it was really cool. Second, I didn't think it was a bad action movie. I enjoyed it. It did feel like a video game, and I was really into video games, so I thought it was entertaining. Choppy, but entertaining. And I've played horrendous video games, and I've watched bad movies. Third piece is looking back on it now. I feel like I enjoyed it more now, and I think the aliens and the human race extinction kind of thing resonates with me now. So I gave it a solid C.
Kind.
I know. And
Yeah.
I said that to my wife when I was doing this. I was like, I have a feeling they're going to eviscerate this movie, but I actually liked it.
I think if you're looking at this movie's box office performance, you're expecting like disaster level bad.
Yeah.
And I don't think this movie's horrible.
Remember, I'm also one of two people that paid to see it, so.
Right. I'll go next because I'm talking anyway. If you go in expecting some kind of overlooked, forgotten cult classic masterpiece, you're going to be disappointed. This is not one of the better films in Don Bluth's body of work. It's just not very good. You can really tell it was one giant compromise from start to finish. It had a lot of things working against it behind the scenes. There was no real chance of this movie ever succeeding, based on what we talked about and what we uncovered. The story is rushed. I think some of the visuals are super creative, but the visuals are very inconsistent. The CG and the traditional 2D animation, they just don't mesh together in a lot of the sequences. That is in no small part due to the budget problems. The soundtrack, if you're going to describe any word for it, it's just dated. I mean, I'm sure you can find some individuals on a small corner of the internet who are nostalgic for this music. I am not one of them. I found it grating. There were several of the tracks that made me envy the deaf. I would recommend this movie really only as a time capsule. I think it's more of an interesting, like, what might have been than an actual good movie. It's a shame that this was Bluth's last meaningful contribution to cinema. Disney owns the rights to this now, and for whatever reason, it's not available on Disney+. It also never got a Blu-ray release, which is a shame because with the power of streaming, this could get a boost with today's generation. I feel like if you showed this movie to kids, they'd like it. I thought it was interesting to revisit. I don't think it's good, though. I would probably never watch it again, but I have seen way, way, way worse. I give this movie a D+.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing that I can think of about this film is it reminds me of Don Bluth when I watch it. I mean, obviously, the man directed it. But while it may not be his best work at all, I find that to me it just shows this appreciation for a time where there were more competitors to Disney and the major studios that kind of allowed for creativity and for films outside of just Disney to really shine in the animation field. So it's just kind of more so this feeling of nostalgia seeing that film and thinking about those films, especially Don Bluth, who is so influential. We talk about Land Before Time, American Tail, and really, I think this is just that moment for me to really think back on all those really great, late 80s, 90s films that really shaped my childhood that were non-Disney films. I mean, can you not think about All Dogs Go to Heaven, Secret of Nim, Cats Don't Dance, Quest for Camelot, Swan Princess, Anastasia, Troll in Central Park? So many that you cannot deny that were really put Disney on their toes to put out some of the best animation and at the same time look at someone like Don Bluth and say, hey, like, you are a clear rival. And so much so Steven Spielberg's like, hey, this cat's got it. I got to put my own animation studio together and put him in the foray. This just reminds me of that era, but it is definitely does not have the qualities of, a quality animation film. I would also, go the same route as Pat and just say, just watch it to get an experience of the 2000s and Jinko jeans. So if that reference goes over your head, just Google it and prepare to laugh at what people thought was cool in the year 2000. This film is a D+ for me.
Wow. Okay. Based on what you guys are saying, I sort of got to thinking, I know what my score, I don't change my score. You'll never influence my score. But I got to thinking about how I would rate this as a child, 4th, 5th grade, whatever. I think I was around there when this came out. What I would rate it as now, as an adult watching it. Because there are there's content that is created for kids that still has artistic value as an adult, and you can feel it as an adult. This is not one of those films for me. If I were a kid watching this, and I remember how it made me feel when I was watching it as a kid, because I still think it's my first foray into this hard, this isn't half as nihilistic as sci-fi can get, but this, this despair of losing an entire planet, what that means. And there's such a good film here that could have been created if it wasn't bogged down by things like, oh, eventually we're going to make a video game. Oh, we're going to do, I think that if a different studio had it, a studio that wasn't struggling, a studio that wasn't hurting, it would have been a lot better. And I think they invested a lot of money into the voice talent when they could have probably spent a lot less, got more unknown voice talent, and it would have produced a better product. Looking at this as an adult, I've read the Revelation Space series. I've seen, I've read The Three Body Problem. I've seen The Three Body Problem on Netflix. I've watched The Expanse. Sci-fi is so important, and it is important to conquer the true existential threats that will face our species and how that's handled. And I just don't think that it could have been done in a way that makes sense to kids. I believe that. But I think with all of the uphill battles that this film had to go through, it fell short for me as an adult. And unfortunately, I have to rate this as an adult now. I will say I'm kinder than most of you. I'm giving it a C- because, and I don't think that people should, I think that this is a film that people should show their kids to, I don't want to say prepare them, because like realistically in our lifetime, it's unlikely. I'm going to knock on wood, but still, I think it serves a purpose beyond a time capsule to this time period. They really attempted something, and one of the loftier ideals too, like humans being refugees and what that means. And I hate bringing this up, but like racism, not to a skin color, but to an entire species, the species that we're all a part of, handled better. It could have been really great, and it wasn't. So C- for me.
That is way better than I thought you'd give it.
I know. I'm too kind sometimes, and I know this, but
yeah,
when I'm not kind, boy, you know it.
I do know it. Yeah,
very generous.
Yeah, I feel almost guilty giving.
I feel like a lot of people worked hard on this, and I feel like its faults were not the fault of any of the creatives.
Yeah.
So I gotta give it a C. I can't push it to a D because I feel there was a passion here. It was stifled, and that's not fair.
You know what? If it was all about passion, I'd give it a B.
For sure.
Yeah.
I still think it could have been better, even with the passion. Yeah.
I have D+ in just my own personal definition of being defined as well below average, one step above being a bad movie. So I stand by my score.
I'm not saying y'all scores are wrong. I'm just saying, I wrestled with it. I wanted to pass it down to a D, but even before we talked about the production, I had settled on a
you know what I wouldn't give a D+?
Spirit Stallion of the
Spirit.
Cimarron.
What do you think you would give that?
Probably I think it's an underrated B-. I'm
gonna give it an A+ because of Michelle Branch. So
I remembered liking the movie. I haven't seen it in a very long time, but I liked it.
It's a concrete story.
Well,
it's like the worst compliment.
We're gonna have to do Stallions Away.
A story. It has a foundation. It builds. It's a story.
Yeah. Bryan Adams. Hans Zimmer.
Okay.
Spirit.
Stallion of the Cimarron.
Yep. Okay. We got to wrap this up.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric, Pete. Eric,
Boys.
you're our wonderful, wonderful producer. Pete, honored professional guest. Thank you both for being on the episode.
My pleasure, dude. This is always so much fun.
Is Pete trying to talk and is he on mute?
I am on mute. So
Okay,
sorry.
there.
It's okay.
I appreciate that, man. I truthfully do love these things. They're awesome because it's just such a fun time.
Even when the movie isn't.
I feel like it's more fun when the movie isn't.
In some ways, it is. Like
That's fair.
us trying to break down the supply chain of the smuggling ring and Diamonds Are Forever.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
That's a good time.
Just
But it's like you need a mix. You want to have some episodes where you talk about great movies. You also want to have a mix where you talk about some not great movies.
Yeah.
The worst movies are the ones you just don't have an opinion on.
Yeah, where it's just what is
Average, just average.
it? Unrated.
Yeah.
NC-17. No one should ever see this for a minimum of 17 years.
This could probably be cut out, but for that, it was I worked so hard on that short for the Diamonds Are Forever thing, and it just like nobody saw it.
no, I don't get it. It's like it's honestly your best work.
Thank you. It just killed my motivation. So
I
now
can always try to republish it and see what happens.
We'll see, but still,
Can't hurt.
anyway. But I know what y'all are talking about because of that short. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Pete, I have something in store for you. So I would like to have you on for another Bond movie soon, Octopussy.
Yes.
It has a jewelry smuggling plot in it that I'm going to need your help breaking down.
I knew there was a reason I was being called back for a Bond movie.
Yeah.
I'll get my whiteboard out for this one. I will.
It's equally vague.
Okay. There's room for interpretation, I guess.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, you're like, huh? Like, how'd that
can't wait.
happen?
I'm excited.
And they go to India in this film.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that what you want Pete on?
Yeah, I figure it can't hurt.
I mean, listen. You always in court you want to have a subject matter expert.
Yeah.
So I don't mind being the subject matter expert
Yeah.
to confirm
You
it.
shouldn't be insulted by this.
I'm not. But it's gonna be funny. When was the movie made? In the 80s?
Oh, yeah.
It's gonna be even better to see the subject matter expert
Oh,
try
there's
to
a
answer.
whole bunch of
Racial relations
stereotypes.
in the
Every
80s.
stereotype you can think of is in the movie.
Yeah, I'm so pumped, man. And that one's it. I think
Not only is it stereotypical Indian, but also from a British perspective.
oh god, even better.
No.
So
Oh,
it's,
yeah.
it's a British
Oh,
perspective
no.
of what the relationship with the Indians were like in the 80s.
And German and Russian.
I can only see great things coming from this.
Oh, man. Well, that's it for Titan AE. Next episode is going to be, coincidentally enough, a James Bond for your eyes only.
All right.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please give us a follow and a 5-star review, and be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. As always, you can find us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. For those who want to support us directly, we already mentioned the Patreon in the beginning of this episode. Links are in the description. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.